Well, a very good day to you all and welcome to Motorhome Adventures. We are on the road again. We've got 2 or 3 films coming out in the next few days as we're now travelling up north to one of our favourite installers, A&E Leisure. We're going to stop in at Belmont Hall for a few nights, so we'll do some updates on Belmont and any changes they may have made there. But there's also a film on the installation of full VB Air. That's going to be on a Mercedes-based motorhome. There's also a slight diversion for the channel in that a number of you have actually asked about levelling systems for caravans. I guess you might be lucky enough to have both motorhome and caravan, and have asked, you know, whether the levelling systems can be fitted on a caravan and how that works. So we've been speaking with A&E, who, as well as doing the Mercedes-based motorhome, have also got coming in a caravan. So we're going to show you some highlights of the installation of a levelling system on a caravan as well. We're going to have a look at some issues around upweighting, upplating of a motorhome. And as I say, a quick update on Belmont Hall itself. So 2, 3, might even be 4 films on the channel coming up. So good to have you on board. Check out the channel for those all those different films. So without further ado, on the road. See you up there. Well, that was a nice trip up, ended with a bit of sunshine, and we're back. A&E Leisure, one of our favourite mods places, and very much looking forward to a couple of days here having a look at a couple of mods that are going on. We've come here mainly because this beautiful van here is brand spanking new from the dealer, and it's an Alco chassis on a Mercedes motorhome, and this is having full VB Air together with 1 or 2 other bits, which will take you through the installation process of that. And I just also wanted to mention the one that's to the right here as well, which is this fabulous Malibu. It's a Carthago Malibu, and it's a lightweight 3.5 ton vehicle. It's an A class, as you can see, and it's had some work done on it to allow it to be upweighted. Now, as you probably may know, there are a number of ways that one can upweight stroke upplate a vehicle, and the reason why you might want to do that is because your payload limit may be a bit too low, and you just want the ability to be able to carry more equipment when you're on the road and travelling, more passengers, and therefore your current weights for the front and rear axle and or for the vehicle overall may not quite have enough payload for you to be able to do that. So one way to go is to obviously upplate, which a lot of motorhomes can have an upplating process. Now, SV Tech are a company that do the paperwork in relation to upweighting of a vehicle, but there is also another route which is provided by VB themselves, and VB of course provide products that allow you to upweight, like suspension, like shock absorbers, and therefore VB themselves now can provide a service, and indeed through A&E Leisure here can provide a service that does that upplating and upweighting for you, rather than going the SV Tech route. So the team here at A&E could certainly assist you in that process, and they, in unison, in consultation with VB, can do the process start to finish for you. So you don't necessarily have to go with SV Tech. SV Tech are an extremely well-known company that have been doing this process for many a year, and very well. But of course, it means that you would then go to a company like SV Tech who would go away and say, who would tell you to add certain things to your vehicle. You would then perhaps go away to a dealer or somewhere like A&E to source whatever those requirements were, and it might just be rear suspension, it might just be basic VB without even the ability to raise and lower it. It might be just that basic VB might be enough to up weight from say 3.5 tons to 3,650. But it might also be the case that if you wanted to go higher than that, to say 3850 or say to 4 ton, then you would need other products. So at this point I just wanted to do a bit more of the theory of it to make it a bit more understandable. There's so many sources of information. What I've tried to do is just sort of bring some of the key concepts to the fore, which might help you sort of work your way through the maze if you're starting to look at this issue for yourself. Upplating, it's obviously sometimes referred to as upweighting. They obviously mean the same thing, except I guess that perhaps upplating is the more common term because that perhaps refers to the ultimate change in VIN stroke chassis plate that you would get for your motorhome. The term Maximum Authorised Mass, the MAM there, which is sometimes called the revenue weight, that is the weight of your vehicle, which includes obviously any trailer, which includes the maximum load that can be carried safely when it's being used. So that's a term that's talked about in the upweighting process, and that actual weight, the maximum authorised mass, is the one that is on your VIN or chassis plate on your motorhome itself. The maximum weight or revenue weight will also appear on your V5C, which is your registration book, and what also appears on your registration document is your taxation class. So if you're 3.5 tons or less, then you would generally be a private light goods, and in fact your tax, as a point aside, would cost you in that sort of region 325 to 360. If you're over 3.5 tons, you become a PHGV, which we are with our 4.4 ton Mobilvetta, and we pay at the moment, well, we did pay 165, but it's September 2025. I've just had my renewal for its 4th year, and it's gone up to 171. So as you can see, it's a little bit cheaper as well, which doesn't really make much sense, does it? But that's DVLA for you. So let's just have a quick look at an example of obviously the VIN or chassis plate that you would have on your motorhome. So here's an example that you would have somewhere under your bonnet. It would have your MAM figure, MAM figure, maximum authorised mass. On this occasion, this one is 3,500 kilograms, which on the front axle, number one, would be 2.1 tons. On the rear axle would be 2.4 tons. That is if you were going to be towing a trailer or similar. The overall, what they call the gross train weight, i.e. all the vehicles, trailers, motorhome together, would be a 6.5 ton limit. So that's a 3.5 ton motorhome. And if we then just have a quick look at an alternative, which in fact is mine, you can see there's my maximum authorised weight, which is 4.4 tons. Again, very similar figures, 2.1 and 2.5, as opposed to 2.1 and 2.4. So, you know, not much variation in those, but overall, an 800 kilogram increase in the maximum load, overall load I can be without towing, which again is 6.5 tons if I'm towing. So, you know, you can see it's a bit of a sort of maze, isn't it, of figures and concepts that see my rear axle only be allowed 100 kilograms more, and yet I can carry 800 kilograms more because of the way the vehicle is set up. Now that, of course, has to do with other factors, and that has to do perhaps with the suspension, with the tyres, with perhaps even the wheels themselves, that then allow me to achieve that overall maximum weight of 4.4 tonnes. So when we talk about upplating or upweighting, and I'll probably use and interchange both of those terms, then it's a question of, so how do we get from 3.5 tonnes to 4.4 tonnes and give myself some additional weight? Okay, so I guess, in terms of when one thinks about, so why do I want to do this? Well, we've already touched on it. It may of course be that you want more payload. And particularly you might want more payload because you don't want to drive an overweight motorhome. And yes, of course, that can contravene parts of the law, but, it also affects, and it can affect braking, your handling. It can affect your tyre durability and wear, because tyres obviously have weight ratings. Yes, I and I'm sure you often see on the motorhome press or social media or wherever it may be, that sometimes people have a fairly laissez-faire attitude to this, because they say the chance of being stopped is pretty minimal. But you're talking about your own personal safety. If your vehicle is too heavy for the wheels, tyres, braking system, suspension that it's got, then actually, you're endangering yourself. And of course, you're endangering other road users. There are, and I just touched on it then, there of course are a number of ways that being overweight in a motor vehicle or in your motorhome can affect you. Each separate axle could be overweight, even if you're not in total overweight. So, you can be prosecuted for having an overweight rear axle, even if the front's okay and the overall you're okay. You can be prosecuted for having an overall weight that's too high, over your 3.5 tonnes or more, 336.50 tonne. You can be potentially driving the vehicle in a dangerous condition if it's just, if it's way overweight. You could be driving without the correct licence. We'll come back to the licensing issue in a moment. Because obviously, as a lot of you will know, up to 3.5 tonnes, you don't need the C1 on your driving licence. If you are a long way overweight, you could even get an immediate prohibition, which would certainly terminate your holiday pretty swiftly. If you were in serious breach of some of your weight limits. Your insurance in the case of accident could be invalidated if you are, again, in serious breach of your weight limits, be it front axle, rear axle, or overall. All of those, of course, result in fines, in points, whatever that may be. So we've had the question before on the channel where people sort of say, well, how on earth do I know? Well, yes, on the channel itself, there is a film where I've gone through sort of everything we put in our van, and I established some weights of it, and we physically went to the weighbridge with a ready-to-travel Europe van full of stuff, including us. And therefore, that is really the best way. You fill it up with everything you're intending to travel with, be it UK or abroad, and you go and find your local weighbridge, which ideally will give you a reading for your front axle, your rear axle, and your overall weight. Some might only just give an overall weight, but having obviously the axle weights is obviously very useful, particularly because of what I've just mentioned above, which might be the problems you have if you are overweight on the front or rear without knowing. So find a weighbridge, load up, put the right fluids in, fill your diesel tank, fill your AdBlue tank. Make sure you allow for both you, yourself, and any other passengers if you can't be in the vehicle when it's weighed. If you can, then great, sit in the vehicle. And get the printout which shows you exactly what you are travel ready for your hollybobs. That's the best way of doing it. So if you've looked at some of that information and said, right, yeah, and particularly if you've got your weight printout in front of you and it shows that you're way over, you won't be the first, that's for sure. you decide that you might want to upplate. So what do you have to do? Well, upplating is about, first of all, deciding whether you've got the right license. If you got your full license before January 1997, then you would automatically get a C1, which I have because I'm an old knacker, and it means I can drive my 4.4 tonne motorhome as is with my standard license. If you got your full license after January 1997, then you've got to apply for your C1, and a brief look at that process is there. You apply to DVLA for your provisional C1. You go to a doctor to get a medical form that they fill in, and they answer the questions for you, or they're asked particular questions by the DVLA, which they assess you on from your medical details. You send them to DVLA and they send your provisional C1. And with that C1, you toddle off to your chosen test centre, which might be an HGV, a lorry type training centre. And they can put you through a theory test specific to obviously heavier vehicles, and they can also do some training and the test, which might be over, a day more, might be 2, 3, 4 sessions, and that's why the price varies so much. And that could cost you, the whole thing could cost you, sort of perhaps bargain really cheap would be 600 odd around there, perhaps 2025. Might be really up to 1,400. It depends what sort of money you're paying out for training. Obviously the doctor's staff carry a fee, the application carries a fee, all those sorts of things. So that's probably the first thing, because obviously if you didn't get through your medical or something, then there would be no point in going any further. So it's to get your C1 if you don't already have one. Then you've got to start to gather the documents that you're going to go to, be it A&E Leisure or be it any other provider of the service. Traditionally, a lot of you may have heard of SV Tech, who do the work for you, but A&E Leisure are now offering the same service as SV and other companies, so like a one-stop shop for everything. And you would need to know your current axle limits. That's obviously just your VIN plate that we've looked at already, a photo of it. Take your V5C, which shows that revenue weight that we've mentioned. But also when you turn up at A&E, either they can look at, or you can tell them what your current tyres are, and they can also look under your van to find out what suspension you've already got. And from that, they can then start to work out what you're going to need to do or add to get to the weight you want to. So there's a couple of examples of tyre data. We all know that when we pop into a garage and ask for a 225/75 R16, but the key information that's relevant to weight rating are these two figures here, which equate to kilogram weights. So 116, for example, refers to a single wheel use, and that number 116 gives a weight of 1250 kilograms, and 114 refers to them as if they're in a pair. Then each wheel would be 1180 kilograms rated. So let me just show you another part of the sidewall which shows that, which is there. You'll see there on the sidewall it actually sets out those two numbers. The first number is the single tyre would have a 1250 rating, that's the 116, and if together as a pair they have an 1180 kilogram per tyre rating. And that equates to the number 114 on the side of the tyre. Just there where we saw 116/114. It's a sort of code number that refers to those kilogram weights. So that's tyre weights. And in addition, as a lot of you also will know, that CP is a reference to a camping tyre, which again is a manufacturing process which makes the tyre structure a bit stronger and more able to take heavier weights, which traditionally come with camping style vehicles. So a combination of weight rating and sort of structure rating all start to build that picture as to what ultimately you'll be able to achieve with your up plate MAM limit. So that information, as I say, that can go to A&E, and A&E now work with VB suspension, and if you needed additional suspension products, which is likely, then depending on what weight your target is, then will depend on what you might need to add. The one that we're going to see, or we've started to look at in the film, just before I jump sideways onto this little input of the theory of it, that Malibu there is having 3 items fitted: springs, shocks and VB semi. That's costing about 4.2k supplied and fitted. But that is done in consultation with VB by A&E Leisure. VB say, right, thanks for that information. These are the products you'll need to add to achieve a higher weight of, say, 3.85 tonnes or more. A&E will then fit the products, as we're seeing being done on that Malibu. And then once they've certified that they've been fitted, then VB can provide the necessary certification, which is down here, the necessary certification and new VIN sticker. The VIN sticker would eventually go alongside your original VIN or chassis plate under the bonnet, so that it shows that the original one's there with the upgraded one, so it's clear what's gone on. And you would then send the certificate together with the cover letter that's provided off to DVLA with your V5C showing what weight you've now been allowed to go to, and that could be 33.65 tonnes, it could be 3.85 tonnes, it could be 4, it could be as high as 4.4 where I'm at with my Fiat chassis. So off it will go, and DVLA will then send you back your new V5. It'll have amendments under revenue, weight and taxation class. So you'll have become a PHGV if you're over 3.5. You'll have the weight recorded at 3850 or 4 tonne. Your MOT will probably stay as a class 4 and shouldn't affect your costings there. You would let your insurer know. Again, very rare that would affect your premium, but always wise to ring to let them know and share. And you know, at the bottom there, as said, enjoy what might be a much higher payload and some very stress-free loading when you're getting ready to toddle off to Europe. So that's a little bit of the additional theory behind it and what the process would look like if you're thinking about it. Remember, of course, always start with, can I get my C1 or do I have my C1 licence? Okay, hopefully that's just explained a couple of bits. Let's jump back into the film. Some of these points might be repeated in the film as I was in the garage last week. So apologies for any repetition, but it'll help give you a good picture as we go through the rest of the Malibu work that was being done at A&E. So VB are now offering that service that they can also legally upweight your vehicle to allow it then to benefit from higher payload quantities. And VB, of course, can provide through to A&E, who can do all the fitting for you, the equipment you might need to achieve the weight you're after. So this one, for example, is having, or has had, VB semi-air put on, it's had new rear shocks put on, and it's had front coil springs changed as well. And that's meant that, of course, its weight can be significantly increased from the 3.5 tonnes that it was originally designed for. So A&E offer a sort of suite, if you like, of different options depending on what your target weight is. It's all comprehensively detailed on the website, the costs of those modifications, be it one, be it two, be it all, be it say 3 together like this particular Malibu has had. And therefore with A&E being able to fit all the equipment and then work with VB for you to get the paperwork done, A&E has become a one-stop shop, if you like, for upplating from start to finish, without you having to go to and fro perhaps to SV Tech, or if there was a similar one out there, I'm not sure, but it prevents you having, or it negates the need for you to have to go to a third or even a fourth party to sort of bring all the various aspects together. It's a one-stop shop here now at A&E, with their partnership, long-standing partnership with VB. Of course, if you want to go even higher in weight, which is technically possible, sometimes when you get to higher weights you might even need to actually change the alloys themselves, because they might not be rated for, say, you know, a 4.4 ton, a bit like our Mobilvetta is a 4.4 ton. That has obviously wheels and tyres that are appropriate for that type of weight. So, you know, it can even be the case, not necessarily with this one, but it can be the case that even things like the wheels can be uprated so that together with the other bits that we've talked about, you can then achieve your desired overall maximum permissible weight, and therefore a much higher payload for all the bits and pieces that you want to carry whilst on the road. So that's the upplating process. If you've got any obviously additions or comments to make, we'd love to hear from you, and indeed others that watch I'm sure would benefit from any of your experiences when trying to upplate or upweight your vehicle. And of course, coming on the channel very shortly are the other films that we did over this couple of days from here at A&E Leisure. There is also a film on the channel about the self-levelling kit going on the Coachman Caravan there. If that's a product that interests you. And of course also on the channel will be the film of the full VB Air plus the levelling function for the full of the VB Air, going on the Mercedes, brand new Mercedes out there as well. So check out the channel for those particular films as well, if they are modifications that you are considering having done to your van or caravan. So this one has had its additions for the upweighting process, but additionally I mentioned at the beginning there that he had that the owner has asked for HY4 to be put on here. That's the same as on our Mobilvetta that you saw on the channel, being fitted to our A Class. So what we're doing now is we're just using the weigh function on the HY4 to see what actually this van does weigh. Now obviously if you went online and looked for the Malibu 3.5 ton lightweight, you actually see figures of sort of 4, sometimes up to 500 kilos payload, which seems quite something when you consider it's a 3.5 ton max. So and the reason I make the point is that what we'll then see, or what we'll now see with the HY4, is the actual weight of the vehicle, and to see whether it has got those sorts of amounts of payload available. Yes, we've added a few kilos with the HY4 system, and there's probably a very slight weight differential in some of the new struts and or the semi-air that's gone on at the back, but it'll be interesting to see what now the weight is showing as, bearing in mind that there are no passengers, it's not full of fluids, it's not full of luggage or anything like that. So it'll be interesting to see what that's going to tell us. So it's just going through its process now. Its wave function, you get this digital display. If you remember when I had mine done, it's weighed itself, it's retracting, and then up here should come a reading as to what, there we go, as to what the vehicle weighed. So as I say, that's interesting. You see the front axle there has got tolerances of 1800 and it's showing 1530. The rear has got tolerances of 2 tons, showing 1827 at the moment, and therefore an overall weight now of 3363. So simple maths there, you know, 137 kilos up to the 3.5. So As I say, online it might tell you 412 or more, but the reality is that, and we certainly haven't added 250 kilos put in the HY4 upgrade. The reality is that these weights often catch you out, and if you imagine that this then needs all of its luggage adding to the garage, to the fluids topping up, you might be running with more water than the mass in running order suggests you run with. Then very quickly these limits, particularly when it's a 3.5 ton van, you can very quickly hit and of course significantly exceed the permitted weights. So that's it sort of exemplifies very much a reason why you would want to upweight and upplate your vehicle by the time you've perhaps filled the garage, bearing in mind there's nothing in there. By the time you fill that garage, and or you might want to put bikes on the back, whatever, then you're going to be very close to all those, if not over those limits. So just a sort of explanation about why one might be upplating, and of course particularly when you go to the weighbridge for the first time fully loaded, as we did, ready for travel, to see roughly what you do weigh, that's when you sometimes get a bit of a shock in terms of what your current weights are. For us at 4.4 tons, it was never going to be, touch wood, it was never going to be an issue, but obviously when you've got a 3.5 ton van, then it could very much be an issue to understand thoroughly. So some interesting little considerations when we look at upweighting or upplating, isn't there? It's a subject that of course causes or creates a lot of conversation. You know that if you're a regular on the channel, that payload is something that interests me, and in fact in some ways concerns me as well, when you see some vehicles and the equipment that's added to them and the payloads that it leaves you. It's a subject that I don't think is talked enough about, but also interesting to see some of those upgrade options which can now be managed all the way through by both A&E Leisure and VB, with that new process that allows your upweighting journey to be completed completely by A&E, whose partnership with VB Suspension allows that process to go start to finish through them. So good to see that that's sort of coming together and allowing the owner of that particular van that we looked at to get a much better payload weight, even though on paper the payload for that vehicle looked good. The reality was, when we saw the van weighed by the HY4 system, the reality was it was nowhere near that was published, and that's something which that I've talked about on a number of previous films as being a very important feature to look at if you're buying or loading a motorhome. Thanks for watching, guys. We'd love to have you as subscribers, of course. We'd love you to be on our journeys, both to A&E Leisure, to Max UK, but of course also in the UK and Europe when we're travelling, which is of course the best part of motorhoming or caravanning. We'll see you again very soon on the channel, and it's been good having you along. Thanks ever so much. Bye now. Bye.